Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast, episode 2. We made it. We made it.
2 episodes. All right. We made it a week.
I did want to thank everybody that listened to the debut episode. It's sad because I think we've had more downloads of our first episode last week than we had of the entire 3-year run of our video, our Twitch show.
Well, why is that sad? That just shows
it's a happy occasion now.
That shows that we're seasoned vets of the podcasting world.
Speaking of seasoned vets, we could probably introduce ourselves this week like we did not do last week. So I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm the Iceman, Chuck Liddell.
Nice to have you, Chuck.
We're going to talk about Mohawks and MMA. That's my best Chuck Liddell, is just my voice and bringing up Mohawks.
I don't know who the hell he is, so you could do whatever voice you wanted. I'd be like, that's a pretty good Chuck Liddell.
He's very 90s. He is the 90s imagery of an MMA fighter. If you're thinking of how did MMA start, you're probably thinking of some gruff, not particularly athletic looking dude with a mohawk. And
he kind of looks like the dude from Walking Dead, Merle. That was Daryl's brother.
Oh yeah, the guy who played the blue dude on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Fuck, what's his name?
Except for way the hell bigger. But
yeah. So he will be played by that guy in the movie, hopefully. But yeah, I was really kind of flattered and very nervous at the fact that the last show got the attention it got. It's still humble numbers, but it's really cool and we appreciate it. And
I make sure that nothing's humble around here. We get 3 downloads and it's yeah, motherfuckers, we're the best new show on the internet.
Tripling our audience, bitch. Deal with it.
But it was a good show last week. The Non-Essential Podcast, for those of you who didn't listen last week, the whole premise is every week we bring different stories, just random stuff that myself and Ben find interesting. We each bring something different, and we don't know what the other person's going to talk about. So I kind of give it till episode, either today or maybe next week, where we'll just, out of all the shit in the world throughout history to talk about, we'll bring the exact same thing to the table. We'll be like, son of a
It'll
bitch.
happen because you and me are basically the same fucking person. It was really early on in the last podcast when we made the Tyler Durden joke, and nothing has disproved that. It's just a matter of which one of us is the Tyler Durden and which one's the actual real person here. That'll be this show's finale. We'll figure out who's imaginary. But yeah, so we each bring our own topic. It was actually, for all my shit talking last week about, we're just bringing whatever and it doesn't matter. I actually got really self-conscious after that first episode. Well, fuck, how do I top?
Well, you started too damn strong. That was pretty good. The Japanese urban legends that are just batshit crazy too. It made it so easy. I think that's one of the things that helped to get the show out last week is it's a very easy thing to tease because it's just crazy.
Yeah. And, I definitely probably didn't top it this week. And I don't, that's the thing I'm going to have to really work to get out of the routine of is stop trying to top yourself from the week before. Just find something that seems interesting and go with it. Because I spent a lot of time on 3 different topics, and none of those topics are the ones I'm bringing today.
See, that's kind of how I've talked about it. I've got a folder, so I had it before we even decided to do the show, just as in case. And there's a lot of them that the first one I started with was kind of I need to test how this is going to go, and it was a topic that I'm interested in, but it was kind of a more educational topic. Mm-hmm. My topic today is a little more dark, but it's still educational. So you get best of both worlds. But yeah, I've got a lot of them that I'll get in there and look at. And I try to you need to, at least at this early point, it's I've got to get something complete so I have something for the show. But I'm also going in and fleshing out other things as I have time. And it's hard because there's some things, some of the things that you think are the most show appropriate and they'll be the greatest, you get to looking at them, you're I don't think I can make a show out of this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we'll see.
you know, to be fair, that'll probably happen. Before we overlap as far as like doing the same topic or something, I think what's more likely is we just like lay a total fucking egg on the show.
Did you hear about the guy that invented ketchup packets?
Who knows? Maybe that episode will be today, because I remember a lot of people around me and on my Twitter timeline were very positive about that first show, and I'm just waiting for that other shoe to drop.
So I think mine's pretty good this week. So hopefully that's the hope, that it is when one of us comes to the table with something not so great, the other one will pick it up. So
that is implying a lot of self-esteem that our partnership over the years has not
that's not proven.
Yeah, we have never been that confident in anything. You know, because confidence is a weird thing. You know, they say you should dance like no one's watching, right? And that brings me to my topic today, where throughout the 14th to the 17th century in Europe,
nobody watched anybody.
People danced where everyone could watch. I'm talking about dancing mania. Have you heard of this?
Oh, I have. I don't know anything about it. Well, I don't know the particulars, but so it's a very, very interesting topic. So
dancing mania, this you know, how I found out about this was very weird, but we'll kind of get into it. This was a weird social phenomenon that happened, like I said, between 14th and 17th century in Europe, usually in like the Holy Roman Empire.
It's hard to believe that Kevin Bacon's been acting for that long.
Right. So, you know, over the course of those centuries, there were a lot of documented instances of it. But they never really understood how to treat it or what was really causing it. You know, because if somebody just has "Come on, Eileen" stuck in their head, how do you stop them?
You can't. Trust me. I've got a lot of history with that. Once that's in there,
it's like waking up a sleepwalker. They might kill you. You got to be really careful.
And sing while they're doing it.
So one of the earliest cases was said to have happened in Bernburg, Germany, which is a great name. I feel like you could just add "berg" to any like 4-letter word, and it'll be a town in Germany now.
Beerberg, that's where I aim to visit one day.
Yeah, where's Beerberg? So in Bernburg, I guess like 18 peasants just began singing and dancing around a church during a Christmas Eve service. And people are saying that was dancing mania. I think they were just like trying to be assholes and interrupt like a church service.
It was the most boring, well, that's what gets me when you think about this. You think, okay, so to jump on your topic a little bit, just dancing mania is just when groups of people start dancing for no reason, and like it's almost like they can't stop. Like you said, it's like sleepwalkers.
Yeah.
But what makes it even more ridiculous is think about the dances and the type of music that they were singing at that time.
Right.
So yeah.
So yeah, it was like, you know, sometimes there wasn't any music. People would just start dancing and shit, and it gets so weird. Like, you know, I had heard of dancing mania before, but I never really looked into it until for the show, and it's so fucked up. And another case happened where like a group of children sang and danced from a town called Erfurt to Arnstadt, which is about 12.5 miles, and they just danced from one town to the other in like a Pied Piper fashion. And that's how I found out about this. I was like, where did the whole Pied Piper thing come from? Did like just some pedophile like lure a town's children away with a flute, or like where the hell did this story come from? And
when they got back, their hair was all snow white.
And one of the theories is that it's like based off of an instance like that, where like these kids just fucking wandered off singing and dancing.
It's interesting because if there weren't other, and I'm sure you'll get into it, but if it was just this one instance where all these kids like all started singing and dancing and they danced 12 miles to the next town, kids are assholes. Like, I wouldn't think it was anything like weird or scientific. You just these little jerks wouldn't stop when you told them no. Like,
well, also, it's fucking shithole Europe. They're probably bored. But yeah, it's a random fucking thing that would happen because, it wasn't just like children, it was a lot of cases, like, say it was a lot of women, but I don't know how true that is or if that's just the stereotype of women love to dance. Well, I think it's
because, and men don't. What happens is there's a equally common phenomenon called mass standing in the corner. You just don't notice that it's happening because it looks normal.
Yeah, that's my go-to hysteria is stand at the back wall of a concert venue and bob your head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I said, that's equally as bad of a problem. It's just it doesn't get the attention that the dancing does.
Right. So like we kind of touched on it. Most of these cases, people would just sort of dance until they passed out. But some of these instances got like violent, like full blown, like goddamn mosh pit, 1400s Europe mosh pits, in the middle of the street, and like fucking orgies were happening sometimes. Like it was.
See, there again, I call bullshit on it at that point. They're just like,
at that point, it's not.
We just want to have it, but we can't control it. Oh no, what's going on?
We're so out of control. Oh, how'd my dick come out? So one notable instance of it was called the Dancing Plague of 1518, where in July of that year, a woman named Frau Troffe or Trophia, I'm not sure what the pronunciation is, and I don't actually do my own research, so I didn't look it up. So this woman began dancing in the street of Strasbourg. Within a week, 34 others had joined her.
So she must have been a really good dancer.
So fuck. Like, if some woman just starts dancing and they join in like it's a bad Pepsi commercial or something, like, she must have some moves. And then they say up to like 400 had joined her by the end of the month.
See, that's how you know that this is some kind of weird phenomenon, because the average person, if there's some random woman that I look outside and she's dancing in the street, you don't join her. You pretend that you don't see her and you
ignore her.
Walk the other way. Right.
It's like if somebody is like just like being weird on a bus or something, you don't engage with it. You pull the cord to get your next stop and you walk the rest of your trip home. Like any self-respecting American. So like I said, they would dance until they collapsed, usually from exhaustion. But there were cases of people having strokes or heart attacks. Like, people were dying from dancing so much. Some reports were saying that like 15 people a day were dying during this plague, quote, plague. But of course, nothing really official ever came out of the city about how many fatalities there were. This is just
of course, you cover that shit up. You don't want to be that city,
right? Well, yeah, they.
It was our water quality. Sorry.
Turns out we didn't really know how to control this party. We lost about half of our population because they went too hard.
But Happy New Year's.
But what was the reason I bring up the dancing plague? It's kind of like all these just sort of started and then they just sort of petered out. The reason they petered out is because they didn't know what the fuck they were doing or even what it was. So the doctors who were consulted on this at the time, like the professionals they are, were quickly able to dismiss any astrological or supernatural causes because these are the best and brightest of their field, right? What they determined, because they're doctors, is that it was a natural disease caused by, quote, hot blood.
Well, yeah.
You got the hot blood.
You know what? A lot of times things enter like our common just knowledge base because they seem like they make sense. For instance, I'll give you one that we've been dealing with a lot because we're doing the intermittent fasting, whatever, but where you basically skip breakfast. And then everybody goes, oh, but breakfast is the most important meal of the day, because everybody's mom said that. Mm-hmm. But there's actually zero scientific proof that you need a big breakfast. In fact, that's what this is all based on, is a lot of it says that's the worst thing you can do is to wake up and immediately eat a giant breakfast. But anyway, so...
That makes me feel better about the fact that I never really want breakfast.
Yeah. And that's why you're skinny and I'm fat. No, but anyway...
No, this is off topic, but I actually learned I'm skinny because I had a complete misunderstanding of how many calories a day I'm allowed to eat. And I was what I thought was the maintain weight was the dangerously lose weight. So for like the last month, I have been starving myself.
So I have no problem hitting my calorie goal, let me tell you. But anyway, my point is, so a lot of times there's things that we take for granted that we say, like, you hear it and it's like, well, that makes sense, so it must be true. Hot blood, that makes no fucking sense, because if I'm hot, the last thing I want to do is move around a bunch.
No, you got that hot blood, you got the fire in your toes. You gotta hit the dance floor.
Hot-blooded.
So the only thing dumber to me than claiming that this is a disease and caused by hot blood was how they thought they should treat it.
Drown them in cold water, right?
Again, best and brightest of their time. Their idea was to treat it was to keep people dancing. So these fucking geniuses built stages and opened up guild halls and had musicians follow the dancers around and play music. Surprisingly, people would join in because you made this weird fucking thing where people are dying into a goddamn party. So, yeah, like, I can't believe it's spreading more.
Imagine being those musicians. Please send a missive to my wife. I will not be home tonight, my dear. These fuckers won't stop dancing. Please send help.
I'm trapped.
You were right when you said I should give up the loot.
Like, what the fuck did they think would happen? Like, I am totally convinced that wasn't a real thing. The doctors were just like, let's just embrace this. Like, how often do we get to party here?
Well, that's the thing, is like back then, I don't imagine there was a bunch of like national holidays for days off. So everybody's like, this is awesome.
Dude, this shit is like, bumping. Yeah, but
you're going to die. It's like, yeah, and death means I really don't have to go back to work. Woohoo!
Yeah, I could not believe reading that. Like, their idea was like, yeah, play music. It's like, what? How does that stop someone from dancing? If they already want to dance, if they already have a song in their heart, bringing one out into the world is only going to encourage it. And then like more people join in, and that keeps reinforcing it. So,
I guess maybe they like could have them play like Macklemore or something, where everybody's like, yeah, aww.
But if you're hysterical, I have been fucked up enough that you could drop some Macklemore and I'd be like, this is great. And then there's a whole nother level of shame the next day where you're like, that shit wasn't great. What's wrong with me? But yeah,
that's the thing too. Like I said, it was something to keep in mind throughout this whole story is the time period. So when you're saying, oh, well, we'll play music and they'll just dance, it's a big fucking party. Well, it's like polka music.
But they didn't play that. They didn't play any like sad music or anything. Like they wanted them to keep dancing until they died. Like,
well, it solves the problem.
Yeah. So, kind of, it's not a huge in-depth topic this week, but sort of like there's a lot of instances like that. They're pretty damn amusing. I encourage people to like look into this a little bit because it's just funny to me. Where people killed themselves. But so the cause of dancing mania. So like I said, they didn't really know what the cause was. And at that time, if they didn't know what something was, it was usually a demonic possession or some sort of plague. Mm-hmm. So the only other treatment besides, taking the party up to, level 11, the only other thing they thought ever to do was to isolate the dancers and or give them exorcisms. So, which I imagine is probably pretty hard if you're trying to do an exorcism and the fucker keeps moving and you're just like, God damn it, quit fucking, just stand
But maybe
still.
you try to trick the devil. Like, you know how you can like step in and like switch someone's partner when you're dancing? Like maybe the priest just like turns around real quick and tries to get the devil to like switch partners and then go, oh, fuck, you got me.
Yeah, like, just fuck it. Get like a bucket of holy water. That way we can just dump the whole thing on her. She's not standing still.
Well, see, and that goes back to it's funny that you said that they came up with like the solution is to make them dance more. When if they're going to claim it's hot blood, then shouldn't the solution be to cool them off? Like
you would think. That's why being a doctor in 1518 it didn't quite mean what being a doctor today means.
Well, yeah, like most people weren't even literate, so if you could like say the cow says moo, they're like, doctor, there you go.
Yeah, if you can get halfway through the alphabet, you've already like passed your doctorate.
That's why they call them
so.
men of letters when you talk about learned people.
Yeah. We are talking about like it's like Django Unchained, where it's like to be a dentist, you just needed a cart with a big tooth at the top of it.
Right. Well, to be fair, that was my whole approach to games journalism. It's just say like, hey, I'm a games journalist. Cool.
Well, that was the great thing about being a games journalist is that's, how everyone got that job. And it's just a matter of how many people believe you. If you can convince a publication that that's true, then you got a job and then you are one.
And as you look into some of these topics, though, you find out through history, there's a lot of professions that work that way.
Yeah, totally.
But,
like I said, most of the people thought it was like a demonic possession thing. Nowadays, looking back on it, one theory was that it was it's called a ergot poisoning, and ergot is like a fungus that grew on rye and other crops at the time during like damp periods. And if you ate it, you would hallucinate and convulse. And the only reason I really mentioned this one is because like I just thought it was kind of interesting that like it's rumored that ergot also played a role in the Salem witch trials. So you probably
so it can go one of two ways. Either you become a really cool guy that can't stop dancing, or you burn people at the stake.
Or you thought you saw some witch shit and you need to like light people on fire. Mushrooms are a hell of a drug.
And that's the shit thing. It's not even the people, at least in Salem, it's not the people that have been poisoned that are dying. It's like, hey, I saw a pig fly out of your mouth. Burner.
Yeah. But, that doesn't quite explain everything. It's because, like, hallucinations and convulsions were a part of it, but, like, other examples of ergot poisoning weren't people dancing until they like passed out, like this was a weird like behavioral thing that was not, you couldn't really tie it to a chemical. And it's the same thing with the other explanations. Like people thought it was encephalitis, epilepsy, and like typhus, but none of these ideas actually satisfy everything that was happening.
Right. Like epilepsy, I could see that because there's different types. We
I'm
picture
sure
like
seizures happened during these,
right?
But like none of them.
Well, and we picture grand mal seizures anytime, or at least I always did when you picture epilepsy. But there's other types of seizures that aren't necessarily falling on the ground and convulsing. Like there's
right.
So yeah, I could see that, but it's not contagious. So why would other people suddenly start being epileptic?
Right. So another theory about it is that this was just a result of stress and tension at that time. Combine that with the fact that you lived in a world where everybody deeply believed that there was just always angry spirits trying to punish people with a curse, and it's probably not that crazy to like come up with like we're cursed to dance forever. Like when you consider like floods, plagues, like a lot of these happened like just maybe like some of the early examples like happened like a decade after the Black Death. So they needed a new fucking tragedy, I guess. And it's like, the rhythm, it's too much. And economic struggles, like, it's probably the most believable thing to me that people probably just said fuck it and just let loose until they died from dancing.
Yeah.
Like how poor and miserable do you have to be to just like boogie woogie to death?
Well, that's the thing. Like, how many of these people were like, and not to make light of it, it's not a funny topic, but how many of them were killing themselves to begin with? And then they're like, you know what? Instead of jumping off that cliff, maybe I'll just dance.
We have a great idea of how to do this.
Other people are joining in. That's weird.
Wait, it's like people wanted a release. Another idea was that like all these, like a lot of these examples were just staged by religious cults, which gets mentioned a lot when you're looking into this, but it doesn't really seem based on much, except like, oh, there were like secret religious cults, and they probably did it, you know. But it's like to for what? Like, you know, it's not really ever explained. But the thing I thought that was kind of interesting about all this is that, like, you know, the people starting it, like the initial fits of mania, those individuals, like, you know, there was something wrong with them, whether it was like, it wasn't a disease, but like, you know, there was probably something mentally going on with them, whether it was just like exhaustion, stress, or something deeper. Like, you know, like those initial people had that problem, but you know, a good chunk of the people who ended up joining in did it because they were afraid to stand out, or like they wanted to fit in, which goes to like what you were saying earlier, where it's like you see someone dancing in the street, you shut your blinds and like hope they go away. But back then it's like, fuck, they're dancing. If I don't dance, then something's wrong with me.
Right. Right. He's the witch. He's not dancing.
So it's kind of interesting, like dancing mania, which, you know, really kind of just, there's not really any examples of it after the 17th century, at least not of any real note. But it's one of the early examples of like mass hysteria that happened in human history. And like, I just find that interesting. Like if you ever want to like talk about peer pressure, like, just like seeing people dance and like being like, well, fuck, I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I have to do it.
I can't be the one weirdo that goes home.
Otherwise, like, I'm the jerk here.
Yeah. Maybe if I stay, if I'm the last one, I win a car.
So that's basically Dancing Mania in a nutshell. But I wanted to bring up one little kind of related thing that will show up if you do look into Dancing Mania. You'll probably hear about Tarantism, which was a weird dancing phenomenon that happened mainly in Italy, and it had to do with spiders, so of course I was interested. Where, like, victims of a particular spider bite, it was usually like a tarantula, but you get conflicting reports. In order to, like, cure themselves of the venom, they had to do a, like, type of folk dance called a tarantula. And like that was how and it was the same idea of Dancing Mania, where you just fucking keep dancing. The things that stuck out to me about it were always the circumstances, though, of when these dances would happen. It would only happen in summer. People who were bit a long time ago, or not even bit at all, would join in, claiming that the venom had returned to their body somehow. Some would die if, quote, no music was there to accompany their dancing, which is what I would say if I was fucked up at a party and I wanted music to keep playing. I would tell people, like, I'm going to die if that stops.
Dude, we're not playing Nickelback one more time, but I'm going to die if you don't.
Dude, man. I'm fucking rolling here. You got to keep the tunes going. If you don't keep the tunes going, I'm going to get real mad and then I'll have a heart attack, bro. People would sometimes tie themselves up and whip each other, have fake sword fights, drink, or jump into the sea. And
that just sounds like a normal Saturday night on any like college campus, though.
Exactly. And that's my last note, is that this probably had nothing to do with spiders, actually. This sounds like people who just really wanted to fucking party. And they were fucking, and like,
especially in such an uptight society where you couldn't even like smile outside of church. It's like, oh, you're having too much fun. Back, spider bit me.
And like most, like most Dancing Mania situations, it probably turned into one of those fucked up like parties that last like 5 days. And, you know, by the end of it, people don't know who they are anymore or how they got in that field or why there's blood on them. They just, it's like, where are their car keys? They don't know. It really struck me. A lot of the stuff struck me as like probably stressed, miserable people, like just lost their shit, and like other miserable people joined in, and these fucked up parties happened. You know, like if you have done any dancing, like I joke about hanging back in the corner, but I have gone to like concerts and stuff where, you know, you kind of have to move around. That's the type of music playing. You do kind of get in a weird like euphoric state, like, and like that's not like even a chemical induced thing. Like that's just you're moving, everybody's moving around you, the music's good or whatever. It's not hard for me to believe that a lot of people got really caught up in that shit. What's weird about it is how long it went. And the fact that people were willing to die to keep moving.
I figured out that this isn't a real thing, but I don't want to feel stupid. I'm going to just keep dancing.
Well, if I stop now, then people will know that we just wanted to do this, and I would be real embarrassed. So yeah, that's what I brought today. I thought that was, like I said, I've heard about it, but like reading up on it and just how absurd it is. Like, yeah, like, I mean, and
that's what I've always heard, is that it's mostly linked to mass hysteria. There's way more to it, and they still don't really know what caused it, but a large chunk of it is mass hysteria. And you don't think, you know, I certainly see that as a real thing. We see it all the damn time.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't think to the point of dancing until you die. Like, yeah. The other thing that I'll have to throw in just for flavor here is you got to imagine if you dance for 4, 5, 6 days, whatever it takes before you die, at some point you're going to the bathroom, right? Like,
or you just let it drop. I mean, if you're
well, that's what I mean. You've got all these people like it's very rave-like, because you've got all these people that have soiled themselves, that are probably terrible dancers at this point because they haven't eaten or drank they're just kind of like,
I mean, like, if it's one of those intense ones where you're just fucking in the street, then, like, they're probably just shitting and pissing in the street, too.
Yeah. It'd sure be a sight to see, huh? Well, maybe not, because apparently you can't stop from joining in, but...
I feel like that's a good survival horror game. Like, just
don't dance. You know, just dance. This is don't dance.
Instead of zombies, like, you're the one person in like an old German village who's not dancing, and the dancers don't take kindly to that.
Danceberg,
dude. Like, fuck this show. I got a game I'm gonna start.
Fun stuff. Probably more fun than my stuff.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get out of Japan for a while, so I went up to Germany and danced, and clear my head from all those things that wanted to fuck me up on a toilet.
We're traveling all over the world. You had I always want to say Japan like I'm about to say Japanese when I'm not. Japan. We had Japan last week. You had Germany, and I'm going to take us through a little bit of history of Madagascar, even though we all are very familiar with Madagascarian, I don't think that's a word, history.
It's actually Madagascarino. Madagascar was founded by Flanders. Not many people know that, but...
Well, there's one thing that I found out, and this is not what my topic's about, but before it was Madagascar, and not that long ago, it was known as the Malagasy Republic, and I really don't blame them for changing the name to Madagascar.
Malagasy Republic sounds like when a producer for like one of those electronic music projects I always listen to. So I kind of dig it, actually.
Yeah, but then if you're from there, then would that make you Malagasy? Like, I don't know.
It makes you Malashitty.
I guess it depends what you ate. Yeah. So anyway, unsurprisingly, by the 1800s, if you're not familiar with Madagascar outside of the animated films, like I wasn't, I've never actually seen the films either. But
so you're going in way blind today.
Right. It's a tropical island off the southeastern coast of Africa, big one. And unsurprisingly, by the early 1800s, it had like started to become a target for European colonization. You know, that like wonderful time in our history where all the white countries in the world decided they own all the other countries in the world, just by virtue.
You know, when that started at the beginning of white countries up to now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going.
So, but they weren't under European rule yet, but France and Britain were starting to establish, trade posts and whatnot. And at the time, Madagascar came under the rule of King Ranavalona the First. I'm going to say these names terribly, especially the one that I'm actually about to talk about. But
that's the thing that like I'm very curious about is like our friend Kelly is a historian, and I wonder when we're going to hit on some stuff she knows about, and she's just going to like pull her fucking hair out because we get so much wrong.
Wrong, right. This is I was thinking that the whole time I was writing this actually. So, but anyway, so he was a young king that was ruling Madagascar at the time. He was actually working with the Europeans to help like establish trade, for their economic gains. They also helped build his military so that he could reign in his country. And he was allowing Christian missionaries into the country. And then he died. And that's where my story starts. So I will warn you.
His story ends. Steve is born.
Yes. I will warn you, if you are familiar with this topic, please give me some credit and stick around to the end. And that's as spoilery as I'll get with that. But when King Ranavalona the First died, his wife ended up becoming queen, and it's Queen Ranavalona the First. And I'll be damned if I didn't mistype that every fucking time. I put her name's in this thing. Like sometimes it was Ralavana, sometimes it was Ranavalona. I could not get it through my head.
Goddamn autocorrect won't help.
No, not at all. Not with that. It's one of those things where she took control, but that's kind of a interesting story in and of itself, where she was the first of 12 wives to the prior king, but they never had any kids. So when he died, there was no heir to take the throne. So technically the throne should have gone to her nephew, the king's brother's son. He was the next in line. But depending on the stories that you read, basically she just stepped in and said, "Nah, it's mine." And so that
power
gives you
struggles were really simple back in the day, where it's just like, "Nah, I want it."
Well, yeah, and that's what she kept saying. Well, obviously, when you're not the rightful heir to a throne, but you decide it's yours, the first step is to kill the rightful heir to the throne. So the story says like
that's
she had
a meme, like
right
when you're the rightful heir to the throne.
So she, according to many, she had her nephew and his whole family killed. So Kim Jong-un would be proud. But she did a lot more than that when she first took the throne. One story says that her first, like, you really have to establish yourself when you're not the rightful ruler, right? Like, you have to come in and be like, "Look, bitches, you're all listening to me." So one of her first things that she did was pass a law that said everybody in the country, every single person, had to shave off all their hair for the next 7 months as a sign of mourning for her dead husband, which that seems like a lot to ask of a country. Like, we can barely get our citizens to pay taxes by law. Be like, "Hey, look, you all better shave your fucking heads as a sign of respect." But the interesting thing is there was one way to get out of having to shave your head, and that was by being a professional mourner. The court apparently had people that it was literally their job to mourn the death of the king. So if that was your job, you were allowed to keep, you got to keep your hair. But the reasoning for that was, whenever you'd go into your public displays of mourning where you'd be wailing and crying, you needed hair that you could rip out by the fistful to show how much in mourning you were.
Jesus fuck.
Right. So
it's like, I didn't even know the fucking guy.
Right. So now we're getting into why I probably should have.
Like, and why is he so hung up on my hair? Fuck him. Like, yeah, that's a bummer, dude. There are like kids who have like tragically had their lives cut short by like disease and violence and stuff, and I know they wouldn't be like, hey, you show you care and like rip out your hair. Like,
right. That's what I can just imagine, like the government official coming along, like, "Hey, Steve, you got to shave your head." Be like, "No." It's like, "Well, that's fine, but you have to rip your hair out if you don't." And be like, "Okay, I'll shave." Like, what? So that seems like a very weird thing to do, but it seems like a thing that would be perfect to do if you're trying to establish yourself as the dominant new ruler.
Well, the thing what would fuck me up is like, I would not want to shave my head and stuff, but I would be the idiot who would like actually make that my hill to die on. Where I'd be like, I'm not doing it, let's fight, and everyone's like, it's just hair, man, and then I get killed because no one will fight with me.
Well, you probably would get killed, because that's what I should probably give you the heads up that this Queen Ranavalona the First is often called the female Caligula. I'm kind of disappointed that they said female Caligula and not Caligula, but
that's fucking. I'm upset that you did say that.
Didn't say that. Title of the episode, baby. No,
like if it doesn't come out like smoothly out of your mouth, that's why they didn't use it.
Right.
Like a girl.
You should see all the fucking apostrophes I had to put in that word on my notes too.
I like that you had to write it down to remember.
Oh, I'm not going to let a gem like that go by.
Yes, gem. That's like you found like an ancient like bird poop, and you're like, look, I found a dinosaur egg.
You polish it and it kind of shines.
All right, going on.
So the point is, she's not known to be a very gentle queen,
a gentle soul.
The other part about her taking control of Madagascar is she had basically the opposite opinions on how the country should be run as her husband did, whereas he was starting to let the outside the European commerce in and the Christian minister,
like any good marriage.
Yeah, exactly. So she immediately like reversed all his stances. They fought to keep out European influence, and they were kicking out the Christian missionaries. And that caused a rift, of course, between the traditionalists, which there was still a bunch of them around. When her husband came and changed from the traditional ways, of course, you're going to have people that don't agree with that. But then under the new ways, when she goes back let's go back to the old ways, then you have a group that's like, no, we like the new ways. So it's kind of a rocky start to her reign.
And not like good Rocky,
no.
Who brought the fight to Apollo. This is a bad Rocky.
She brings the fight to her people. Apparently she enacted a system of taxation that was through forced labor. So like, on the one hand, I'm like, cool, I don't have to pay taxes. On the other hand, it's like, but I do have to work in labor camps for like 8 months of the year. Woohoo. There's one story where she decided that she wanted to go hunt buffalo, which I didn't know that buffalo were in Madagascar. I still don't know if they are. But
we know they're pretty much not in America anymore. We took care of that problem.
Right. But so anyway, she wanted to go hunting buffalo, so she rounded up like 50,000 people to strike out with her, because apparently where the buffalo were, there were no roads. So she had a whole like army of laborers that would go ahead of her and build a road so that she could then take the road to go hunting.
What?
Right.
Do you want to fucking catch it in like a fence too? Like,
well, that's what you normally see when I'm not a hunter. I like to fish, but I don't hunt. But when I picture hunting, I picture stealthily sneaking up on prey or sitting and waiting for it to come to me if I'm so inclined.
So when you say you like to fish, you mean you like to put a fish hook in a goldfish bowl, right? And Wait for the.
But not until my army of servants go to the store and buy a fish and bring it back to me.
Right.
Fanning me the whole time because maybe I want to go hunting, but I shouldn't have to be put out in order to do so.
Yeah, when I say I go fishing, I mean I send people to the grocery store to get me some fish. Jesus Christ, man. Royalty is so fucked up.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, under her rule, the life expectancy of her people took a sharp decline between being like worked to death and just poor conditions.
Did they try dancing?
They did not. I didn't read a single thing about dancing, and that might have solved the problem. But like I said, you tend to earn a lot of enemies when you rule this way. She seemed to enjoy dealing with her enemies. And so, a lot of people were put to death. Boring traditional methods like stoning and crucifixion and burning at the stakes and drowning them.
All the ways that would really suck when it's like you got people with swords like right there. Just stab me. Like, just
right.
Why are you fucking around? This is why you're a bad leader, because you take a long time to make simple calls. Like, that's how I die.
They didn't have HBO back then, so they had to think of entertaining ways to kill people, I guess. But let's be honest, though. Like, you talk about for the 1800s, that seems relatively modern to us, but even go back 100 years prior to that in Europe, and having. Being a cruel, like, tyrant king ruler and having people killed and forcing people into labor, none of that is really that unusual. It's not enough to earn you the name, the female Caligula. So
I think to get like the Caligula name, you got to do that shit he did with the dogs, which was real fucked up. Like, he did a lot of fucked up shit, but it always stuck out to me how he would like just throw dogs off a fucking like wall to their death, and it's like
that's how you start, and then you're like, dogs aren't exciting anymore, bring me a peasant.
Bring me people.
And that's so she had other more creative ways of dealing with enemies as well. Like one of them, she would powder her feet in poison and make the person kiss her feet, and then the person would be subservient and do it, and then they'd end up dying later a horrible poisonous.
But you could just fucking make them have to poison.
Right, but that's not fun. Like that's efficient. She wanted to, I guess, enjoy it.
This is a 90s wrestling villain.
One of my favorite ones, because this is what would happen. If I was executed by this woman, this is what she would fucking do. Well, first she would. A lot of times they would just throw people off of ceremonial cliffs. So that in and of itself isn't super unusual either. But she would also throw people off of ceremonial cliffs only to have them caught at the last second and pull them back up. And just when they thought that they were being saved, then she'd push them off again. And that's what would fucking happen to me. You'd be like, oh, thank God she's got some mercy. Nope, she just wanted to do it the second time. She'd have victims' skin, flayed off while they were still alive. Crush people's testicles in a steel vice, which that goes back to the Dark Ages. None of these are things that she invented. They were just things that she enjoyed doing.
She just had a big book of like how to be a dick.
And I think between the two, I'd rather be flayed alive than have my balls crushed in a vice. I mean, both of them are going to probably kill you through shock anyway. But
the balls one though, like if you do live through that, ugh. Like,
well, yeah, that's true. Like, would you really want to? Yeah. You're like, please, where's that cliff? Throw me off.
Yeah, for the love of fuck. Like,
she'd catch you by your crushed testicles.
I'm just saying, put my head by my head in that vice, and then like, so I don't have to feel this.
She'd cut people in half lengthwise.
The classics.
Right. I read something about tying people to a stake and then filling within a big cauldron and filling it with water to boil them alive. And I'm like, I don't think you really need to tie them to the stake.
Fuck? Like, how have I heard of like Vlad the Impaler, Elizabeth Bathory, like all these fucked up leaders? I've never heard of this woman.
No, well, she's right up there with them, and that's what she's known for. This one seemed like relatively tame, although it's a shitty way to die. She'd put people in sacks and tie them up and just hang them up on a post until they just died in the sack. I put died of starvation or sac-related maladies. I imagine you could have blood clots or other things happen to you, suffocation. I don't know.
Ask your doctor about ball problems.
But and I'll give the credit to this one. The best story I found, and by best I mean absolute worst, was on a blog from a Jason Porath, who actually used to work on animated films, and now he blogs about awesome women of history, or just
awesome.
Yeah, that was a wrong context to bring in his wording on that.
This is a bodacious babe, I would say.
Yeah. Important women of history that get overlooked, I guess, is a good way to put it. But anyway, so this story I found on his blog says that there were 4 prisoners who had been sentenced to death by burning. So out of all those we read, that's one of the tamer ones. But out of the 4, one of them was a very pregnant woman. So that's cool. Yeah. Apparently on the day of the execution, while the Queen's men worked to build this big fire that they were going to use to burn these prisoners alive, it started raining. And the rain kept putting out the fire. So if you're waiting for your execution, I don't know if that's good or bad, because you're like, oh, thank God the fire's out. But they're still trying to kill you. And
no, I don't. I think there's nothing good about that. I think at that point you're like, I'm ready to die. Fuck. Like, it's like when your team's losing in like baseball and there's a rain delay. And like... And you're just like, we're going to lose fucking anyway, just call it.
Yeah, it's like the top of the 6th. It hasn't reached the 7th yet where they can count it as a full game. And you're down 13-0. Yeah, right. But, so, they kept building it again and kept going out. And while this was going on, the one prisoner gave birth to her baby. And so, well...
Fuck.
That's a good sign, a healthy baby right before you're killed.
God damn it. This is gonna suck, isn't it?
Yes. Like all storms do, the storm eventually passed, and when it did, there was
God.
There was a triple rainbow. Not a double rainbow, but a triple rainbow. So all the people that had apparently people gathered for this. I don't know why I guess you have to, otherwise they kill you next.
Well, it's like labor camps or watch people die,
Right. So, but anyway, the triple rainbow, and this woman gave birth, and the fire kept going out, and everybody viewed this as a sign from the gods that say, oh, these people have been, forgiven, and they've been left off. And then the queen had the fire lit and had the baby thrown in first.
Oh my God.
Right. So, yeah, that tells you how shitty and how evil she was, right?
Yeah, that's what I needed.
Well, here's some good news. Fortunately, it's all pretty much bullshit.
Oh, good.
She does exist. She was a real person. She did come to the throne that way.
You fucking played me like a balalaika, my friend. I was like, wow, how'd I not hear of this psycho?
Well, and this is the thing, and I just like you with yours, I would encourage people, if you're interested, to look into her, but you got to be careful, because she really, most of the stuff you find still recounts this stuff as if it's fact. Part of the problem is most of the history that's out there is in French, because it was French missionaries a lot that
I see.
That firsthand accounts.
They chronicled it, so.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. Some of it's probably, I'm sure she had people executed. Rulers back then did. Sometimes rightfully so, sometimes not so much. But what happened is, like I said, when she came into power, she was anti-European, like migration, whatever, assimilation.
And of course, the migrants are the ones writing the history. But
exactly. She did have a lot of the missionaries. She didn't even kick them. Some of them got kicked out. A lot of them there was a rule that after they'd been there 10 years, they had to leave. And most of them were forced out through that rule, not even like a get the fuck out. It's just like, okay, you're done, go. So like most of our wonderful history written by, and I say this as a Christian, but history is written by the victors. And in this case, they were shitty white European Christians that wanted to show how barbaric this country was to help justify the later colonization of Madagascar, which did end up happening in the late 1800s. It became a French republic or something like that. And it was until about 1960, actually. So most of these stories are exaggerations or flat out falsehoods.
Just to make her because she was
anti-Christian, basically,
anti-missionary, colonization or whatever. Like, so she was a very easy target to be like completely built up to be one of those like monsters of history.
Right.
That's wow.
And the
That's
hard
nuts.
part is I don't want to say you don't know how much of it is just because we know now with our modern eyes looking back, because this is not the first time something like that's happened with history. We can see the bias that it's written but what actually, like how bad it actually was for her people and how bloodthirsty she actually was, a lot of that you just don't know. Even the few things that I've read where people have gone to Madagascar and talked to people from the area anytime her name comes up. This was 1800, so we're 200 years after the fact now, almost 150. I think it was late 1800s when she died. So now she has a reputation there, and it tends to be one that's not real favorable. She's not. If you go over there and mention her name, they're not like, "Oh, we loved her. She was a great ruler."
She's
but
on
a lot
all
of
the coins.
Right. But a lot of that really seems to stem more from this hit to the economy they took when she quit, working with Europe. And a lot of that again was actually for her husband to build up the military. He'd give a lot of their resources in exchange for weapons and help, raising an army, which is what you need to take Madagascar. Like I say, it's a huge country. And so it is often fractured. And that's one of the things her husband did was to, raise an army and bring in a lot of like the rebelling areas or whatever. So yeah, she's not the most fondly remembered ruler, but it's not because she burned some woman's baby at the stake in front of her.
Since that's, that's the twist you pulled. Like, it is really interesting when you think about it, because, I brought up like Elizabeth Bathory and all these other historical figures who are just known to be fucking like demons, basically. And there is, there are truths to a lot of their legends or whatever, but it's something that like, it makes history more interesting to kind of embellish it like that. So people want to believe that, like, oh my God, that was that monster or whatever. And there is like elements of truth to it, but there's also that fact that like most of the time these people are being written about by the people who actively fucking hated them.
Exactly.
And those were the historians. So it's like, yeah, if I can like add a few things here to like build up the legend of this like piece of shit who fucked with my interests, like that's a very interesting bit of info there that you added there. Like, this was a great topic.
I know. I was hoping I could get to the end and then spring that out. And that's why that was my disclaimer at the beginning. Like I said, if you'd heard of this, because if you know it's fake and you hear somebody sitting here telling it like it's true, you're sitting there going the whole time, fuck you. That's not fair.
The baby thing, I was like, what the fuck? Like,
well, and to be fair, maybe she did it.
Maybe she did it, but
but it right. Yeah. Probably not. In fact, here's this will be like kind of the feel good stop to it. The one story that I found that was kind of substantiated and generally agreed that it actually happened was there were a group of Christian missionaries that had to be kicked out of the country. Again, some of them were because it was just their time was up, but there was a couple, like one was in the country illegally, like he never registered, he just
showed up.
Fucking showed up. And another one was like spreading like anti whatever resistance stuff, I think.
Another one showed up just dancing randomly.
There were ones that did particularly, and this is kind of also going to be evidence of why most of these brutal, the worst of the worst stories probably aren't true, because these were the kind of people that would have probably faced the most wrath from this queen,
right,
if she was willing to like burn a baby at the stake. But she didn't. She just exiled him, back to there. She said, get the hell out. But what she did do, because she was mad at them, is instead of letting, just having them go to the port city and get on their boats and leave, which would have been about a 5-day trip, I think they said. She rounded up some of her soldiers and had them take them on a 15-day trek through the swampiest parts of her country. Basically just like doing the Uber driver thing where it's like, wow. Oh, no, sir, we must turn right here. And her reasoning was she was hoping that they'd contract malaria. And most of them did. All but 2 of them died. Not there in the swamps, but after they got home.
Holy
so,
bitch.
you know, there was... There is a bit of a streak to her, I guess, but it doesn't seem nearly on the level of the stories that she's earned.
Well, yeah, you know, like I said, when you're dealing with a lot of these types of topics, there is usually fire where there's smoke, as far as like how fucking evil people were, but it's probably not to the extent that it's ever brought up. But there is something, like you did say, like, you know, these were the people she would be the most, you know, pissed off at, but
right.
But at the same time, like, that almost makes me think, like, if she did something more direct, you know, there's the possibility that would, you know, spark like an actual conflict.
Yeah, that's true. And they'd mentioned that too, is I think she was smart enough of a ruler to know that if you just murder these missionaries that for the most part people knew were there, the one that was there illegally, she probably could have got away with offing, but yeah, I mean, I think that played a part of it, but I still have a hard time going from, well, she was willing to exile these people and just kind of give them a fuck you on the way out the door,
to doing like a Hail Mary with a baby into a fire.
Right. So
yeah, that does seem like a jump, you know, who can really say at this point, but that is fucking interesting for sure.
Yeah, I came across, I forget what I was looking at, and this was in my folder, but when you come across the term female Caligula, you think, okay, I got to look into this.
Right.
And then like, so I'm thinking it's going to be a Vlad the Impaler, you know, that was going to be an interesting story to begin with. And then as I like got into it, again, this will be in our show notes. I'll put some links. Because I've got a couple others too, but that Jason Porath, it's rejectedprincesses.com is his blog. And like I said, it's interesting because he used to work on animated features. I don't know exactly what he did. I don't think he was an animator, but he worked on things for Disney. And so that's kind of how his interest on his bio talks about how, well, his blog's about the princesses that Disney would never make a movie about.
Bullshit. One's coming for this one right now.
Right. So he was the one, like I say, I always encourage on any topic that we talk about on this show, because we do what research we can in our limited capacity in like the week that we have to prepare.
Female Caligula coming to Kingdom Hearts 3.
So if you're interested in Ranavalona the First, I certainly encourage you to look stuff up, but keep in mind, you got to be very careful what you take for fact and what you take for fiction. He was one of the few, his website was one of the very few that was willing to very quickly say, you know what, this is what's going on here and it's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, and that'll especially be true for this show because we're doing this more out of entertainment. This is not an educational fucking show at all.
Unless PBS contacts us and wants to give me a big contract. But
probably everything I said about Dancing Mania was probably wrong.
It meshed up with what I knew about it, but that was admittedly very little. Yeah,
but when I do take my notes on it, I am trying to bring out the most entertaining stuff, even if it's not verifiable. You know, it's what can make for a good story on there. But it is an interesting kind of note to end on, because we will touch on a lot of historical stuff on this show. Just how much of history is like, it's just a like concoction of different perspectives and personal biases and stuff that go into telling a story, and how much we will accept as fact, even though it's really all based off of, you know, one group of people's perspective. And that's just
it's funny too sometimes, like how unbelievable some of the stuff can get, because I did the same thing when I was reading it as you did when I started by talking about making people shave their heads and the public mourners and stuff.
Yeah.
How willing we are to believe something like that, not because necessarily of like biases and stuff, although that can play a role certainly, but because it's a fantastic story.
Right.
Like as human, and that comes into it too. History gets all sorts of distorted. It's either on purpose and usually nefarious, biased viewpoints, or it's just because it makes for a better story, and those are what get passed on. You know, if I tell you, hey, Ben, I went to the grocery store yesterday and I bought some pasta sauce, you're going to forget that like 5 minutes later. But if I say I went to the grocery store and some fucking weird guy was throwing pasta sauce at people, well, there you go.
Then I would
That's a
assume
story.
you had like a dissociative identity disorder and you were throwing sauce at people.
Yes, that's what usually happens. So anyway, yeah, that's what I have for this week.
So 2 episodes in, you've already lied to me. So we're off to this show is really, it gets better every week because now I know I can't trust any word out of your mouth.
So yeah, if you made it through the show again this week, thank you very much. We appreciate the listens. Of course, we got to kind of throw this in here, Token. We always appreciate likes and shares and all that kind of stuff. You can find the show on Libsyn at the homepage, but it's also going to be on iTunes probably by the time that this episode goes up. But if not shortly, and Spotify and Facebook and Insta, it's just basically everywhere you look, we're taking over.
Yeah. Our Twitter account, the username on that is just non-essential pod, all one word.
Mm-hmm. And thanks to Clab Music for the tunes. That's your project and Jake's, but that's where our music comes from. If you were wondering, check them out.
Yep, you can.
New album out.
New album just came out a couple weeks ago, and we should be getting all of our stuff out on Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, like iTunes, all the places you could get music at. We should have the album, and all of our other works over the years should be available in a couple weeks now. But if you want a direct way to get to it, you can go to allthatclab.bandcamp.com. All of our stuff is free to download. You can get the best quality versions. So if you like more sort of chill instrumental electronic music that we kind of sandwich this show in between until we can get a proper theme going, then check us out there. Thanks again for watching. Now that the first episode we released it kind of early because we were excited about it. We wanted to kind of get it out before everybody got into like all their stuff with like E3 and stuff. But now we're on a set schedule, so it'll be every Tuesday, new show. I think that's what we decided, Tuesday.
Yep. Tuesdays will be the show. In the meantime, you can listen to the last week's show if you hadn't, or just follow us on Twitter for my random horrible puns while I advertise the new stuff. So our Twitter for this podcast is a thing of nightmares, and I'm thinking about blocking it. It's a work of art.
And it's part of it, and I'm a co-runner of that Twitter account.
So yeah, thanks for listening, and we hope you tune back in next week
for some more non-essential info.